Hey everyone, we are here for our next session, which will be around the Open VASP initiative, and I'll let the speakers introduce themselves and take it from here.
Okay, thanks a lot, Scene. Great to join you all. We are coming to you actually from Switzerland today. My name is Ian Simpson from Bitcoin Swiss, and we are going to be talking a little bit today about the Open VASP protocol. We won't get too much into the technical details or the legal details because it is a topic which involves some regulatory and legal aspects. Maybe just briefly, the Open VASP protocol deals with FATF travel rule compliance, and it's an open protocol with a white paper which you can find at openvasp.org. And it's basically a setup which allows any virtual asset service provider to be compliant, to transfer and transact between VASPs without being part of a central database or any kind of proprietary setup. And this has been launched in November 2019 with several companies in Switzerland, also with partners in Asia and also now in North America. So today we're going to be talking about that and a little bit about open source and what this means for crypto and how it might go forward. We have Felix Laufenberg, who's a crypto solutions architect at Bitcoin Swiss, and Philipp Meyer, who's the head of blockchain solutions at Avalok. And for those of you who don't know Avalok, it's a large banking software provider. Bitcoin Swiss, of course, one of the oldest and largest crypto financial services companies in Europe. Felix, you want to say a few words about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Ian. So I'm Felix. I have an IT background. Studied computer science, working now at Bitcoin Swiss in the crypto team, designing basically the solutions that integrate our banking systems with the blockchain systems that we're using.
Mm-hmm. Very good. And you, Philip?
Yeah, so I'm Philipp Meyer. I'm, as you said, running the blockchain practice at Avalok. And I have a background also in computer science, but from quite a while ago. And I've spent 25 years in the banking industry, in particular in the equity derivative space.
Okay, very interesting. So as mentioned, the Open VASP protocol is completely open source. And without getting too deep into the technical details, maybe Felix, can you tell us what is it about Open VASP that makes it open and it makes it easy to use for virtual asset service providers?
Yeah, sure. So the reason the Open VASP protocol is open is quite natural when you look at where it comes from. It's sort of a regulatory requirement that is being brought upon all VASPs that engage in the virtual asset services. And the Open VASP Association is really a coming together of people involved in this marketplace and trying to find a solution together. So it's not really one provider building a solution for everybody else. It's really us coming together to build something that works for us. And the best way to achieve that is to do it in an open way so that we have an ecosystem that sort of maintains itself by providing incentives for people to participate and by not relying on any central party. So the way we actually do this is by the initial white paper that David wrote that specifies the protocol. And then, of course, we have a reference implementation on GitHub that's publicly available, where anybody can contribute with GitHub issues. And on top of that, we have discussions on the protocol level where we're looking for improvements that are then being signed off and included into the protocol. So really all the development is open, and that really allows us to have multiple implementations of it and multiple organizations contributing to this. And there's really no central point of failure, as we like to say in the blockchain space as well. Right? So it's really quite a powerful concept for us.
Okay. And just to give some background again, so as part of the compliance for the FATF travel rule, virtual asset service providers who send crypto from one to the other are required to send the beneficiary and the sender information as well. Now, of course, that kind of brings up privacy issues or data issues. How does Open VASP deal with that?
Is that also for me? Okay.
Yeah.
So the reason is the way it is built is open, but of course, not all of the data is open, right? We do, of course, utilize all of the cryptography and security that has been used before to ensure that the data that is sent is not visible to anybody but the two parties that are engaging into this communication. So we're not trying to reinvent the wheel or trying to make everything open, as in everybody can see everything. It's really more about making the protocol open and the standard open, but still apply, the same old principles to data protection that would be used in any proprietary software as well.
Okay. And if we turn to Philip, I'm going to throw out a few numbers, right? Avalok, as I understand, has offices in 30 countries, 140 banks, 4.5 trillion in assets, which are controlled by Avalok software. So the question is, why open source? Why be involved in something like this?
Yeah, well, good question. Well, first of all, we believe in crypto, and we have been interested in making crypto mainstream. So one thing we saw is that the crypto infrastructure is still lacking of, there are some gaps, lacking of main features. And so the first thing we did was integrating crypto assets into our core banking system so that they can be traded or transferred natively. And working on that project, we realized that what you mentioned for travel rules was badly missing in the crypto area. And so when we saw the protocol and the white paper, the draft of the white paper David Riglin was writing, we thought, yeah, that's exactly what we think is needed in that area. And that's why we jumped on in that boat, and we helped to create the association, and we also helped to structure this and bring some means also to the association to make it happen. So we believe that openness will help to reach mass adoption. In different initiatives, in similar initiatives, we see two ways of succeeding in this type of tooling. Either you have a set of big players that are kind of building a consortium together, or you have an open protocol which is attracting more smaller players and which eventually gets a strong momentum in the marketplace and then succeed because of that momentum. So we think that this, because of the maturity of the crypto market, the only possible way is the second one. So creating this kind of open association, which is pretty much in sync also with the roots of crypto, of the crypto world, so to speak. And therefore we were very keen on supporting this, and we are founding members of that association. And yes, we don't believe for this type of business that a closed initiative managed by a unique company would succeed. This would create a lot of questions from all the actors wondering about confidentiality, because as you pointed out, Ian, there is a lot of confidentiality around this. So the fact that encryption is, as said by Felix, is at the heart of what we are doing, and and we are using also very Whisper and all those technologies to ensure that this is really confidential and encrypted end to end. I think this is also key principles that are that have been attracting for us, and that's why we are supporting this.
Okay, very interesting. There's a couple questions about Avalok in the chat. We'll come back to that in just a second. Maybe back to Felix just to give us an overview of the state of development on the protocol. There's several different implementations going on, right? How is it going overall?
So we're seeing very continuous progress in the development. We have, of course, the protocol side. We started off with the initial sort of marks out version 0.1. Quickly after you something like that is written, you realize there's small things here and there that need a bit of improvement. So we started the OVIP process, which is part of our open sourcing, where we have sort of modular improvements to the initial white paper. So there we have a set of, I think, around 14 OVIPs, something like that, which improve on the initial protocol. These are all finalized and concluded to make a version 1.0, which would be what we are planning to launch. And on the implementation side, one of the big challenges, but one of the really cool things about Open VASP is that we're not starting out with making one implementation and launching that as you would typically see, but we actually have multiple development teams individually working on implementing this. And we are not planning to launch with only one of them, but we are planning to launch with at least two implementations of the protocol that can work with each other. So as I said, we currently have the two implementations which are quite far ahead in the development. They are at the moment in integration testing, so they have sort of concluded the development and now working out the little quirks of getting it working together. We have another third implementation which is catching up as well. And then we have always different teams that join the calls, and they're sort of interested in joining as well. So there's quite a bit of development activity, both on our open source code, but also, of course, there's software providers that are interested in developing their own closed source solutions that they can offer as a service.
Okay.
But of course, integrating with the open source standard.
And do I understand right? There's one in C# and one in Java, right? Two implementations.
There's one, the two that are now close to being done. This, I think, is C# and Rust, and then there's the Java implementation catching up.
Okay, very cool. Philip, you mentioned just earlier when you were speaking that you see a lot of like some barrier to crypto going mainstream because of the compliance. Do you think Open VASP is kind of the stepping stone to take it even more mainstream, even in the banking world and the financial world?
Yeah, well, indeed. I mean, this is, something which was also crucial for us looking at this protocol is extensibility. So it is not a protocol which has been designed only for the FATF rules and the travel rules and that's it. It's a protocol which is layered into different layers using different messages, and those messages can be also expanded with new messages being created for other purposes. So I think this is a very, very good starting point for something which is really which has large ambitions and which can help to solve a number of issues we see in the crypto market. So looking at and yeah, maybe one more word also. We see a lot of, or we have seen in the past that the promise of being your own bank and that you don't need a bank anymore, and in fact multiplying the number of tokens or the cryptocurrencies is creating a jungle in which the investors have struggled to navigate, and they need help. Like in traditional assets, they need help for understanding which are the right products they need and where they should invest. And we see that the banks are the traditional banks continuing doing this even in the future, in this future world. And what we see also is that thanks to segregated accounts, the investments of those investors are more protected than they were in the traditional banking, because they are sitting on chain. Even if the wallet is ultimately managed by the bank, the solution we provide, for example, is really and not enforcing but recommending segregated accounts for which and for each customer. So the asset of every customer is completely segregated from the asset of the bank.
Okay, very interesting. Maybe let's take one question from the audience, getting a little bit off to the side, but Avalok, is it looking to integrate with DeFi, liquidity staking, yield farming, banking
Yeah,
treasury, things like that? Maybe a
sure.
loaded question, but looking forward
Yeah.
to your answer.
Yeah, sure. I mean, what we are looking at is we are coming from the traditional world. This is no surprise. But what we believe is that we can bring a lot of value in integrating those two worlds together. We don't see a world against the other. We see more something which is in transition, and ultimately will land in this new world. So we believe that over maybe 10 to 15 years, all assets will get digitalized because the current traditional infrastructure is completely outdated for securities. So DeFi is one of those possible new ways of trading with this continuously automated price discovery. So this is something we are definitely looking at. We have a prototype which is demoing the way to create new products on Ethereum. So let's say a bond or an equity or a derivative with all the payoffs being programmed from inception, and then we have an option of moving a slice of that product on Uniswap, for example. And yeah, we would like to offer this possibility to, again, seamlessly and very easily for banks and their customers to integrate new features and new channels like DeFi.
So, I mean, I actually don't know if somebody like UBS or Credit Suisse is an Avalok customer. Maybe they are, but that means that they could eventually be doing things over Uniswap, UBS and Uniswap.
Maybe not UBS, but yeah, we have large customers, and we will make available this in our platform. It doesn't mean that they necessarily will do it, but they could at least, yeah.
Okay, so that's kind of the power of open innovation, or at least open minds, right? You build it, to use the old phrase from the movie, build it and they will come, right? That's
kind of, yeah, sure. No, but we already have customers, maybe not formally asking for this, but we have been working with customers on tokenization projects so that they understand exactly what it means. Large banking organization, how they could issue products for their customers, and how they could offer a secondary market for those products, because it's really important that for investors to have a secondary market and to avoid the lock-in.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that means that there's definitely a look towards security tokens. To take one other question from the audience. Yes,
indeed. Again, our view is that the current traditional infrastructure for securities is outdated. I'm old enough to have seen this being built, and so I can really tell you that it's old.
Older than you, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've seen some of the beginnings of this, and
okay.
and again, and this is coming from, some of the messages that are used there are coming from the former telex messages that were in use before.
Okay. That's interesting. If we talk about the infrastructure and maybe the architecture, going back to Felix, what can you tell us just about the architecture or also the extensibility? Because Philip mentioned the extensibility of Open VASP. How does that work, to give some more technical insights?
Right. So Philip already briefly touched on this, that yes, the initial spark of the Open VASP association and the Open VASP protocol was the travel rule. That was sort of imposed on all of us, and we have to follow that. So we need somehow the means to actually do it, to engage it, to implement it. And the answer to that is Open VASP. But we built Open VASP anticipating that this will not be the only type of message that needs to be sent between different virtual asset providers. But there will be different applications, right? So Swift is sort of something in the traditional fiat world where they are sending messages, and they have, I'm not an expert on that kind of stuff, but they have endless various types of protocols running, and they have different message types. And we expect very much to see something similar also for the virtual asset providers. So there will not only be, we need to know the beneficiary, there will be other applications running on top of this. So actually really what the Open VASP protocol is sort of a domain-specific messaging protocol. And then on top of that, you have the applications running which really help you solve a specific problem, like the travel rule in the first instance. To achieve this, we have built it in a layered fashion, as was mentioned as well. So we are building all of this on the Vacu messaging protocol, which is sort of the successor of the Whisper, which is stemming from the Ethereum community. I think a lot of people probably heard about that. And on top of that, we have sort of a DNS name lookup service on the Ethereum blockchain as a smart contract, where we really go from the mapping of what is kind of the IBAN in the VASP protocol to the how do I technically address the receiver of a message. We also have a different smart contract, which is sort of an authentication service on the Ethereum blockchain, where you can actually identify a counterparty to really be a VASP and know what VASP it is and get all the information that you need to know about the VASP. And then you can really start engaging with messages, and that's the layer where we get into the cryptography, and it's another layer on top of the Vacu layer, which has additional cryptography and message consistency, perfect forward secrecy, and so on. And then on top of that, you have the applications running. So we're already, behind the scenes talking about the next applications that could be interesting. I'm not sure how much I can give away of that, but maybe Philippe has something he wants to mention there. But there's for sure more exciting stuff coming in the future.
Yeah, and one thing also is that all of this is blockchain agnostic. So that's also very important for us, that we are not supporting only Ethereum. Of course, you have to implement this on something, and Ethereum has been our choice. We are using bricks of Ethereum to run this, but in essence, the messages are completely agnostic from the blockchain, and this could run for any blockchain, Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever. So I think that's important, and also just not to compare this with Swift. There is a fundamental difference, which is that we know that for example, that the logic will be in the smart contract. So there's no reason, like in Swift, to propagate events that are normally that should be propagated on chain. So what we are concentrating on is agreements between parties, like for a transfer, that this transfer is valid and should take place, and then it's then created on chain. But it's not a message that is going to be interpreted like Swift by the different parties and then translated into something. No, the transaction itself is and remains on the blockchain.
Yeah, that's a very good point, and I think it's very fundamental to the understanding of the Open VASP protocol, is that it is just a messaging layer that is to a large extent decoupled from the execution layer of the transactions. That will, of course, remain on the native blockchains as it is. It's just a means of communicating about those.
Mm-hmm. Very, very cool. Again, for anybody who kind of joined in the middle here, we're talking about Open VASP. If you want to check out more about it, openvasp.org is the place where you can find out more information, check out the white paper, maybe kind of learn a little bit yourself. And I think one thing that's interesting, because we talk on the technical side, on kind of the banking software side, but this is something that can help like large players like banks, or very small players like individual wallet providers, whatever. At any level, it's not something that requires a huge upfront cost where you have to implement expensive software necessarily in order to do something in the space and be compliant at the same time, right?
Exactly. That was one of the key ideas, that we don't have a central party basically having a monopoly on the communication, and they can technically spin up the prices as they want. So the protocol is open source. We have an open source reference implementation. Of course, if you want to rely on a hosted environment, if you want to rely around services, you're going to have to pay for that to somebody. It's not going to be to us. But there's of course going to be people profiting from this, which actually elevates the whole ecosystem, because only if you have incentives, you get people building stuff for it. So you can, of course, do your own implementation. You can use the reference implementation or build on that to get something completely free to participate. But there's, of course, you need to host it and stuff. So there's some cost involved, but it really should be a low-cost solution in the end. Or at least you can opt in to make it a low-cost solution.
Okay. Maybe one not final question or one last question to Philip directly. When we talk about Bitcoin as an open source project, and many people, as you mentioned before, sometimes say, well, there's different problems with Bitcoin, there's energy consumption, there's different things. Do you find still among banking clients and so on skepticism around this virtual currency that is open source and not controlled by anyone worldwide? Or is there more and more acceptance of this kind of open concept?
Well, on one side, I think open source is more accepted than before. I mean, even in banks, most of the servers are running Linux, so they are accepting quite well open source software. The thing which is probably more a burden for people, and they get concerned about this, is governance. So who is in charge? Who is deciding to implement a feature or not? And more importantly, who decides to revert a transaction, like we have seen 2 years back on Ethereum. So I think governance is ultimately making the immutability and therefore the trust on Bitcoin and other DLTs. So in that respect, we think, and this is something also we share with our customers, that open source is a better world than closed systems. So regarding the concerns we see, yes, indeed, we see always the same questions, like Bitcoin is not backed by an asset. The Bitcoin value will eventually drop to zero. It's not scalable. It consumes a lot of energy. All the things you read in the newspapers, and yeah, of course, we hear a lot of this. Surprisingly enough, much less when the price is going up like it does currently. So
obviously,
yeah, and for me, that's a little dishonest, I would say. And we have one customer. They have banned crypto, and they stick to it, even if it's now worth almost 50K or 40K, and they stick to that decision, and that is really respectful. But yeah, others are making much more noise when the price is lower than today. Yeah.
Okay. And Felix, if you get into a discussion with somebody about the open source ethos behind Bitcoin, what do you tell them? How do you explain or talk to them about this?
I mean, open source really is at the core of Bitcoin, right? I mean, it's supposed to be decentral. That also means that the discussion and community around it has to be decentral. And even us, I mean, we are sort of a centralized unit in the services that we provide, but we engage so much with different communities of the different blockchains, and we're profiting ourselves so much from the open source community and trying to give back with GitHub issues wherever possible. But it really is a blessing, because without that we couldn't do business either. It's the community effort that really carries a lot on top.
I think one thing that's interesting for me when I think about products and things that come up, and people always talk about time to market. But one thing that's cool about open source in general is that it enables time to trust. Because if you have the crowd that's checking your code, your implementations, and so on, everything can be checked quickly, easily, and then the trust can be built up much faster. So I think that's also something that's central behind Open VASP, and look forward to seeing how it develops further. I guess we're more or less out of time, but it's been great to chat, and hopefully everybody learned a little bit today about Open VASP and what's possible, and look forward to talking more about it in the future.
Thank you guys so much for this. It was really great. We're going to transition to our next session now. Thanks again.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you for your time.
Yep, bye.
Yeah.